Okay, so I think we can start now. We have Susan August here. We have Paulina, APIORKOR, AKOSUA, HANSON, I believe, and so we can begin. I just got a mail from one of our guests that she's unable to make it, so we would, and that's DELPHINE Hammond, BREW-HAMMOND. So, okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to Day 4 of WomanFest Ghana. My name is Elizabeth Johnson, festival producer, and tonight we are having an exciting panel discussion. The title of this panel discussion is Representations of Women in Entertainment. And to do the wonderful moderation, I have Paulina NKANSAH with me. We are actually live on Facebook, and we are live at LOTAD, so you can join us at LOTAD, and it's not too late. We have some film screenings right after this panel discussion. But for now, without wasting much more time, I'd like to introduce our moderator and hand over to her for this discussion. So Paulina NKANSAH is a British Ghanaian artist and curator that has been exploring her love for culture, music, and stories in her pieces for the past 4 years. In 2020, she decided to take her long-standing love and passion for high life and African popular music and share it with the world through her digital archive museum called An Ode to High Life. So you can follow An Ode to High Life on Instagram at An Ode to High Life. And it is dedicated to retelling and preserving the diverse history of our high life in African popular music and its legacy. She is the moderator of WomanFest Representations of Women in Entertainment. And so thank you, Paulina, for accepting our invitation to moderate this session. We couldn't have thought of anyone better. And let me just hand over to you to carry on with this conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And it's great to see so many people here already. Yeah, so as Elizabeth said, my name is Paulina, and I'm going to do the wonderful job of moderating this amazing talk, event, and panel. We have an amazing set of women, individuals who are going to be joining in the conversation, sharing their knowledge and their insights on the topic of representation of women in entertainment. So I'll start off with no particular order to introduce our first panelist. We have APIORKOR ABBEY. She is a Ghanaian American poet, writer, author, literature critic, media practitioner, activist, and the author of The Matriarch's Verse. And then we also have Susan August, who is a budding soul and jazz singer and songwriter who moves seamlessly between genres and styles. She creates neo-Afro soul pieces blended with traditional Ghanaian music, such as high life and palogo. We also have Nana Okusia Hanson, who is the host of Y Lounge at Y107.9 FM. She's also a feminist activist and creator of the graphic novel series Mean Girls. And I'm aware that she couldn't make it, but lastly, we also have DELPHINE BREW-HAMMOND, who is Director of Events and Operations at MTG, which is also known as Miss Tourism Ghana. Okay, you can see everybody's here. So just to remind everybody in the audience that please feel free to join in the conversation. We'll take in as much questions as you can bring in throughout the conversation. So the topic of as Elizabeth said, the topic of this event is representation of women in entertainment. So as the entertainment industry in Ghana is growing, this conversation will touch on various ways women are portrayed in entertainment and how that affects the social perceptions of women. It will also query the fields women dominate more, while exploring how women creatives can use their art to change such narratives. So the first question I have, and this can go to anybody in the panelist, is there a type of Ghanaian women more portrayed in the entertainment industry? And I'll start off with AKOSUA, if she's here.
Yes, I'm having a bit of problem. If I'm trying to log off and come back on again,
okay,
so that you could see me properly. If I could come back just a second, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I'll direct that question to Susan. And let me know if you want me to repeat the question.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I would say that yes, in general, I think that women in general are known to be vulnerable. That is, in every industry aside the entertainment industry. But one aspect that I'll talk about is being special in a way, I would say. That is one thing I would like to hit on. Maybe I'll talk about it more later, but I think that is one type of woman that is portrayed in our entertainment industry now.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm going to direct the question next to APIORKOR. I think she just tried, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Hey.
Hello. Yes. So your next question, I'm ready for you. And good evening to everyone who's listening and watching us.
Good evening. Thank you so much. So the question that the first question that we posed was that, is there a type of Ghanaian woman more portrayed in the entertainment industry today?
Sorry, is there a type of?
Is there a type of Ghanaian woman portrayed more in the entertainment industry?
Yes, I think we've come from the, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, from the tradition of the video vixen, right? So when we think of a Ghanaian woman in the entertainment industry, we think of a video vixen, we think of a woman who is dancing in a music video. Now, that culture has been transferred or imprinted upon even our artists in the entertainment industry. So our musicians, again, our dancers, people who get on stage, women feel as though if you don't look a certain way, you don't move a certain way, you're not sexy enough, and you don't portray what people expect to see. So that has continued to creep and creep and creep and creep, and it's become a big part of what we see in the entertainment industry today.
No, that's great. And just on the back of that, so I just want to see if Nana AKOSUA is here, but while I wait for her, just on the back of what you said, APIORKOR, in terms of the portrayal of video vixens, has that affected you directly as a woman in entertainment? And this also goes to Susan as well. And because, AKOSUA's joined, amazing.
Hi, AKOSUA. But yeah, it affected me directly in the sense that it takes you a little longer to gain the traction that you should be gaining. Unfortunately, people are paying less attention to your artistry and your intellect and more attention to what you look like and what you're wearing. So it does affect you inadvertently, but it also affects me in the sense that women who I get to work with, especially younger women, think that they need to portray that to succeed. So a lot of them are unwilling to take the long route, for lack of a better way of putting it, and they would rather not work with you because, you know, what are you doing that's entertainment savvy? So it's affected me in those two interesting ways.
Susan?
So I would really affect me. Affects everybody that affects me. I would say that what she said, I agree with, what APIORKOR said with, because you have to look a certain way for people to, you know, pay attention to you. And as I said, the controversy, people want you to, we thrive on controversy. So it's like, if you are someone who's not controversial enough, you know, people don't pay attention to you as much. I would say that, so definitely it does affect me.
No, I definitely hear that. And AKOSUA, thank you for joining, AKOSUA.
Thank you. So your question was again?
Yeah. So the first question was, is there a type of Ghanaian woman portrayed more in the entertainment industry? And we've had APIORKOR and Susan giving their responses. So that's the first part of the question. And then APIORKOR said something about the portrayal of the video vixen. And so I just asked her to elaborate. How has that impacted her? Has that impacted her personally? So yeah, so we'll start off with the first part of the question, and then if you want to talk about the impact, that would be great as well.
Okay. All right. Hi to my fellow panelists. Hi, APIORKOR. I miss you. Mwah, mwah. uh, so yes, I do think, I mean, historically, there has been a specific image that is favored in entertainment. The video vixen, as APIORKOR mentioned, is a very popular image. There's a sexy representation that has to go with being a woman. Yeah, so I mean, those stereotypes have existed and actually does pressure women who are trying to get into music, into film, to look a specific way. I myself have been trying to, when I was now entering the industry, acting was the first medium of art I wanted to, you know, pursue. And I found it really difficult to get into Ghanaian movies because there's a specific look, you know, there's a lighter skin, there's a way you carry yourself. So for instance, I'm from the School of Performing Arts, and when you go for auditions, you go dressed to be ready, like you're going to exercise, right? So black tights, black top, just ready for that, right? And then I come out and I'm going to movie auditions, and actually expected to be wearing 6-inch heels and all sorts of, you know, and it's like you're going for an acting audition. However, that was actually what was supposed to be the way to look. So obviously I didn't really fit in that world, even though I was trained as an actor. I mean, in the best school in Ghana, you know. So yes, there is a specific stereotype. And I'll say maybe lately in the last few years, that stereotype has been changing, because there are women who are now being themselves so much that it's now encouraging other women or girls to be like, okay, I can also be this other type of woman in these spaces. And that's not just in film, music, that's in radio and TV. It's in people like APIORKOR, Sean, you know, with the natural hair and all of that. So yeah, I'll stop here.
No, that's amazing. You touched on some great points about, you know, of course, APIORKOR mentioned the video vixen, but somebody who's coming from a kind of art form where it's not about what you look like, but it's about the work you do, you know, studying that for so many years and then going into the industry, and it's like you're expected to wear the glam and the this and that, and it can be quite pressuring sometimes, and disheartening. And what I want to also ask you ladies, how have you managed to, let's be honest, like, have you managed to overcome that? Let's share the real tea. Let's share the real story so that we can encourage each other in this conversation. But like, share the stories. How have you managed it? You can start with APIORKOR. I can see you are nodding there.
How have I managed it? The first thing is, you know, just accepting that this is my identity and I'm going to run with it. And that identity is not about, I mean, there's a huge part of how people perceive you and how they receive you, but it's more about who you are, how you feel. And when you're comfortable in who you are and how you feel, naturally, people latch on to you. So for a very long time, even before getting into entertainment, I had wanted to go natural. But I didn't have the space to do that. You know, if you're transitioning, you have spiky hair at a point. You need to play around with your hair. You're doing turbans on some days. And I was teaching before I came into media. It's actually AKOSUA who dragged me into media. And, you know, I would be told things like, even in the teaching field, that natural hair is not professional. Now, I have a big sister who had been in banking right from her national service days and rose the ranks. And she was a natural girl. And she had to deal with that kind of prejudice all the time. So it took me just saying to myself, well, this is who I am, this is who I want to be. I want red hair, I want blonde hair, I want green hair, I want natural hair. And that's what I'm going to do. But beyond that, in this space, if you don't have a firm footing, again, back to the thing about identity, a firm footing on who you are, where you're going, what you want to be, you'll fall by the wayside. So I knew very well that, look, I love news and current affairs. But at the same time, I didn't want to be your 9-to-5 news and current affairs anchor. I didn't want to wake up every morning talking about politics and economics. That's what I wanted to do. At the same time, I didn't want to do hardcore entertainment punditry. And those are the two options that were being presented to me in the media when I joined. So for a very long time, it was difficult to place me. for my employers, for my colleagues, like, where do you put this person? Because she wants to talk about deep things, but at the same time, she doesn't want to do the quote unquote, now call them shallow things that women especially are being forced to do. And even to break through the news and current affairs is male dominated. You know, there are all these perceptions about, oh yeah, you're a young person, you're a woman, you're not out there, you don't understand politics, you don't understand the way the economy works, you give birth at a point, and you know, all these things. It's very difficult. But what I told myself that was I was going to carve a niche for myself in lifestyle, And that meant that I had to live my truth. So yes, natural hair is one of those things, but it also meant that instead of having a conversation, say, about the budget, and then on the other extreme end, having a conversation about money that musicians are earning, in the middle, I will talk about how the budget is affecting people on a social level. So taxes and how that affects artists, how that affects women, taxation on things like sanitary towels, you know, things like that, taxation on the products we buy for our hair, our clothes. It's still a serious conversation, but it's not on either extreme end. It's also light enough and relatable enough, but it doesn't belong on the extreme end. And it was very difficult. Even getting my employers to, and our professor was there in the beginning, so I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about that. Getting our employers to understand that even things as I'm a poet, things like poetry, literature are also art, and they can be entertaining. And these are also things that we should be looking into and showcasing and promoting. Extremely difficult. I remember the very first time I proposed that we have a poet on one of our event bills. My boss said, that's great, but nobody knows them. Nobody's going to buy a ticket because of a poet on it, you know? But now, fast forward, here we are. They come and ask me, oh, are any of the poets available? And it's actually a budget to pay them, you know? So it's been very, very, very difficult. It's taken longer than it should have. But, you know, those are some of the hurdles. And I have a family, so at some point along the line, I'm getting married, I have kids. It's not enough to tell people that, hey, you know what, I have young children, I'm pregnant. So, you know what, let me take my time. For both my pregnancies, luckily I was blessed enough not to have pregnancies that are too difficult. I worked to the very end, with all the fatigue, with all the swollen feet, keeping the long hours, you know, just to make sure that when you go on maternity leave, you don't have people coming back and saying things like, hey, you know what, you've been gone, so somebody has filled your spot. You know, because men don't face those challenges. And it's a little easier in, say, a bank, or if you work in a law firm, to take your maternity leave, you have your 3 months, you come back and you plug in. In the entertainment industry, it's fast-paced. So if you move and somebody sits in and they're great, they'll take your spot. So you need to leave a memorable presence. You need to leave value behind and show that you're indeed valuable to the team before you can do any of those things. So it's been very challenging. I know my co-panelists have a lot to say, so that's just a snapshot of what I've been through.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it's just great to even just hear what you said about, even in the midst of the adversity and the challenges, you had to carve, you know, a way out. And fast forward, people are asking for poets, people are asking for writers, people are asking for musicians, you know, and that's just historically, you know, women, we've been those hidden figures, but now there's space for us to be like, yeah, we're here, you know, which is exactly why representation matters. So just on the back of what you were talking about in terms of music and entertainment, I just want to ask Susan, for you, have there been any challenges as a woman in music in terms,
Yeah, so definitely there have been issues. I mean, definitely, I think we've all experienced similar issues. What she said, which I really like, is knowing who you are, knowing your identity, knowing what you represent, and knowing that even though it's not prevalent in the industry you are in, it is growing. And sometimes you want to be that change, or you want to be that example for other people who feel like they cannot fit into the regular mold. You understand? So I think that for me personally, I'll talk about an issue where I wanted to go on someone's show I mean, I can't name names, but I wanted to go on someone's show. And, I do jazz, soul music. It's different from, the Afro pop and the kind of, songs that are everywhere now. So this person said, the person told my manager, I was like, your girl, she doesn't show enough, skin and those kind of things. And we left the conversation there, I could have easily said, okay, I could have put it in my mind that, okay, this person wants me to do this, or there are so many times I've heard this so many times that I would want to fit into that mold. But I believe that being sexy is not a bad thing, or showing your skin is not a bad thing, but it depends on who you are, You have to know who you are and what you stand for and what makes you feel sexy. Maybe it's showing my legs, maybe it's showing a little cleavage, but it doesn't have to be your definition of being sexy, you understand? So I think that it's very important that there are different representations of women who are doing different things, who are fitting into different molds to show the younger generation coming that it's possible to make it while not being, like everybody else. So yes, I have faced a lot. Also, I'll talk about the fact that sometimes most of the time you need like a man being the forefront. Sometimes sometimes when you're going for these deals, like I'm going for a show, I used to do a lot of session gigs and all that in hotels and bars and things like that. And you meet someone and the person wants to help, but as soon as they find out that you have someone you're working with, which is a male counterpart, sometimes the deal is off because the intentions behind the deal was not, was not the right thing. So I guess those things are issues where sometimes you wish, should I have gone myself? Should I have gone alone to meet this person who I don't know, who's trying to, approach me? But as soon as, they realize that you have other people with you, they withdraw. So you realize that, okay, this was possibly not because of my craft or my creativity, but it was because of, okay, she's a pretty girl, so I could take advantage of that. So yeah, that's one aspect that I'll also talk about.
Yeah. Thank you for that. AKOSUA, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. I'd say I see Roxanne actually asked a question about is knowing yourself enough, because what if you do know who you are and your capacity, and yet you're not given a chance or space to maximize your potential. The first thing I actually was going to say was being yourself, right? And being yourself then means knowing yourself, and knowing yourself is a lifelong journey, honestly. And entering entertainment is such a heady thing. If you do something that people like and you get a lot of likes and you get a lot of good responses, that already starts to send a message, maybe this is what I have to keep being, and sometimes you realize a person just continues becoming that thing that they get so much likes for, so much responses for, right? And then you get lost in, is this me? Do I know myself? How much do I know myself? All of that, right? So I think there is a lot of, well, I'll say in my personal journey, that's how I can answer this question, is that I guess I'd always been taught to be myself, right? And I guess being yourself in a world where most people struggle to find themselves can actually be healing for a lot of people. So you find that people resonate with it, right? So for instance, when I say things as I know them, as I've come to know them, you find people agreeing and loving it as much, right? But then not to necessarily mimic my thoughts or what I've said, but then for them to feel like people have come up to me and been like, AKOSUA, Chale, I'm this way, and you made me feel like I'm this way. Like they found their own unique selves, right? That to me is a blessing, because everybody is different, right? If you get to see the varieties of ways we all play, that's what makes our public forums very interesting and very engaging. But then to the second part of what Roxanne was saying on what if you're not given that space, right? I would say, who said this? I forget, but if anyone can remind me, build that table, make that space, right? So for instance, in my own life, there wasn't that space for the person who is the radio presenter who is really into philosophical history and philosophy and activism. You know, I work at YFM. Ours is more the hip hop entertainment, what's hot, what's not, right? But yet I'm a rabid activist. I'm a feminist who is constantly fighting on so many issues, right? So I guess what I had to do was I was myself despite the pushback. And 5 years later, seeing my journey in even just YFM alone, 5 years later, I realized I've grown an audience of people who are conscious, yet love to party, who are like, sometimes people would engage me on my activist issues, which I'll just drop a little bit of in the middle of a hip hop song, you know, and before they would have told me not to do that because your listeners will tune off. But now they actually enjoy that because this is who AKOSUA is, right? And they've come to love who AKOSUA is. It doesn't mean someone else needs to do the exact same thing, but I made that space for me, and then people came onto that space. So that's how I'd say I did it. And it's one suggestion, but yeah.
That's amazing. Guys, this conversation is, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm just getting inspired. I'm like, okay, girl, bring it, yes. You guys touch on a few points that like, and Roxanne, thank you for the question. Identity, and I know Susan mentioned it and APIORKOR mentioned it. You know, Susan, I think you said, oh, was it AKOSUA? Basically, like, when it comes to knowing yourself, it's a journey. It's a long journey, and you know, there's no rush to try and know every aspect of yourself, because even as a woman, your body's changing, everything is changing, so many things are happening. But it's such an amazing journey, and it's so amazing when you're able to do it around people, like-minded people as well. And I love what AKOSUA said, and I'm going to paraphrase it. You know, carving out that space, as APIORKOR said, carving out that space, creating that space, and the people that are for you will come. When we think historically, there have been amazing women who were first at so many different things, you know, and now we look now and those things are not first. It's just natural, it's just normal. So like, a round of applause to each of you and to all the amazing women that are killing it in their game. You know, keep being yourself, keep doing what you need to do. Yeah. No, that's really, really good. So my second question was going to be around what are the issues that exist for and about women in the entertainment industry. And you guys already touched on a few bits. But I wanted to ask, how do you guys deal with because I think Susan APIORKOR touched with the men in the industry. When it gets tough, when you are told no, when you're not invited into the boardroom, when you're not invited into those conversations. And it would be great for you to highlight in your respective areas as well, just so people can kind of glean in on how they're able to manage that. APIORKOR, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So one thing I've discovered along the journey, and I mean so what I'll do is I'll quickly say something to the last part of Roxanne's question. She says, you know, so what if you know who you are and your capacity, and yet you're not given a chance or space to maximize your potential? I stopped waiting for people to give me spaces and chances a long time ago. I stopped. So just like what Chris said, create your own space. I'll give you an example. So I host a show called Diplomatic License on City TV. I love diplomacy, but I didn't want to sit down and talk about FDI and trade. I mean, at least not in the usual way. I love lifestyle, I love fashion, I love culture, I love art. So I thought of marrying those two things and having our diplomats in Ghana but looking at the cultural side of them, where they go, what they do, what they like to eat, how they're living in Ghana. But we still do talk about trade and all the other things, but through culture. And so your average person who is not necessarily interested in a hard conversation is still learning something. It's edutainment, right? Creating that space. Now, how do you do that when you have men dominating the space? When I see men, I see human beings. I don't see men. I see human beings. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm a human being too. And so if a man is doing something that I believe I can do or do better or do more of, I'm going to enter that space. Now, it's easier said than done, granted, because, already just by virtue of being a man, people think you're strong and you can carry a camera. People think you come with an authoritative aura, and so you can direct shows and you can produce them. But I have creativity. I have a mind too. And when we do say that women need to work a little extra, a little harder to be seen and to be recognized, it's the truth, the unfortunate truth, and that's what needs to be done. So I would read a little more, so that I always have the upper hand of my male counterparts. But what that does is it also makes you a stronger candidate for the things you want to do and the spaces you want to occupy. Without even realizing it, you're becoming more knowledgeable about your craft. You are owning your space in a way that nobody else can, because nobody can take the knowledge that's in your head. And whether you like it or not, no one person is a single repository of knowledge. So one person may have it, that may be a man, but you don't have the knowledge that I have, and you still need to plug in. So those are some of the ways that I've maneuvered it. And I'll just reiterate, first, when I see men, I don't see men, I see human beings. And I believe that apart from the fact that I don't have their genitals, I can do pretty much anything they can do with the parts of their body, and one thing I realize about men is that when you become good at your craft and you exhibit that, they respect you and they begin to want to, tap into what you have, because they also want to make sure that they're not losing ground, right? So they begin to want to tap into what you have. And once somebody wants to tap into what you have, you become a leader. You're not a follower anymore, you're a leader.
Yeah.
And that's how, I've dealt with it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I loved how, you were saying about the reality of working hard, but then the wisdom and, what you gain from it. That's a word. That's a word. AKOSUA, is there anything else you want to add as well?
I would maybe add to what APIORKOR is saying by just giving examples in the industry of women and the challenges that they've gone through. Because I work largely with in the music field, looking at people like, for instance, Eno, right? Eno, who is an amazing rapper, period. When she did begin in the industry, like you couldn't even argue any other way, right? But you find that when she, what do they call them? The beef songs, put out beef rap, call out rappers, because that's what rap is about. It's about that bravado, it's about that challenge, is about that. So she plays that hip hop game, right? She calls out rappers, men rappers, and they refuse to take her up on their challenge, right? And even I think one of them kind of tweeted about how he wouldn't want to battle with a woman. It's, and all of that. So for a while, this is where you have someone who is reigning in what she does. I mean, Eno spits. You can't even, she's got everything. She's got the lyrics, she's got the look, she's got the style, she's got the craft, and yet she just left as this thing alone there, right? And just because no, she's good but overlooked, right? However, she still stayed in the game. She still did her thing. She still, she's a bigger woman. She was proud about it, showed it, and this year she did win the VGMA award, and we definitely did feel all that joy for her, because for a while that'd been ignored. So for instance, someone like that was a challenge she went through, because there's also a specific look, there's also a specific way people also respect you in certain fields. And the game she's in is a man's game in Ghana, where rap is, it's the men who dominate, and even they didn't want to take up her challenge back, right? I know other challenges, for instance, people like Miss V and Feli Nuna are artists who in the end left their labels and decided to take charge of their own labels, of their own craft, the business behind their music, right? And Feli did this for a while, and now she actually has been signed to a big label by who was it? FFF. Oh my goodness, I don't know why the name's just blanking right now, but yeah, I forget. But yeah, but she's now signed on to a big label, but she did this for herself for a while. The same thing with Miss V. Miss V is currently now running the business side of things because they have challenges, like some of the challenges are the panelists that Susanna mentioned, you know. So maybe these are some of the examples I would give of challenges women have in the music industry specifically. And also, you don't see as many women in the business side of things, you know, in artist management, in you know, talking the money in the brands and all of that. Is usually the woman is the artist and she has these men behind her running those things for her. So for me to hear that from Feli, I did an interview with her where she said she was now taking charge of that. For me, that was a very, very powerful thing. And to hear that Miss V herself did that too. So yeah, those are some examples I'll add.
No, that's good. That's good. Susan?
Yes. So
Yeah,
I
would you
liked
like to
what
add
she
to that
said
as well?
about, yeah, I'd like to add to that. What she was saying about not a lot of women being in the business side of the music, which is very, very true. So because of that, you as the artist, you deal with a lot of, you are in a male-dominated, you know, circle where you have producers, the majority of producers are men, majority of, you know, the managers are men. So you have all these issues. So I think that exactly as both my panelists are talking about, we have to, you know, challenge that narrative. There has to be more people who are interested to take charge. And as we are having examples like, you know, taking charge and, you know, so challenge and I'm going to do this, it's going to, you know, cause other people to take up that challenge, to enter into those challenges are there and they're not going to, you know, magically change overnight, I believe. But it takes one person at a time to, you know, challenge those narratives as well.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, I loved what AKOSUA said about any of us changing the narrative. And before we get on to that question, or my question around changing the narrative, APIORKOR, I wanted to ask, what does it look like in the literature space in terms of women being represented? I know we've spoken a lot about media and entertainment, media within entertainment, but when we talk about literature as well, what does that look like? And AKOSUA, I'm also going to ask you that question as well, in terms of literature as well, and acting actually as well. So, sorry, APIORKOR, if you would like to go first, that would be great.
Unfortunately, there's still precious few of us, and it's been like that for a while. The male voice, be it on the page or on the stage, is better appreciated. Maybe because we've seen more males over time. Women, you see, when you're writing, especially when you're writing something like poetry, you're bearing your soul. And so you need to be willing to put yourself out there. You need to be willing to expose a lot of things. Now, for women when you live in a society where every little thing you do, you get judged for, you get insulted for, people don't engage you on the topic, they engage you based on your gender. And so a lot of women shy away from that. And unfortunately, that affects the literary space, the artistic space. Now, when I entered the poetry space as a performer, at the time, most of the poets were memorizing their poetry because everybody thought that spoken word meant that you had to memorize and then you come and spin, you had to do slams. But that wasn't my kind of poetry. And so I read my poetry, I take after the tradition of, if you're talking international, Maya Angelou, if you're talking Ghana, Atukwe Okai, Amatai, they read their poetry, even in performance. And people didn't understand that. Also because a lot of people learn their poetry on the streets, which is great, but I learned it in school. And in school, you learn that there are different ways of performing, that kind of work. And my work is very heavy with punctuation. And I always tell people, I can't memorize all the commas and the semicolons. So I'd rather perform and read, and that's a skill on its own. But it was a male-dominated space, and the men were louder, and they spoke about things. They could sexualize women in their poetry even. I wasn't going to do that because that goes against everything I believe in. A lot of the men too would, do love poems. Again, women are the subject. If you're a woman and you write about love and sex, then you're seen as a spoilt girl, a bad girl. But we've come a long way, and more women are writing, more women are publishing, more women are, getting into the literary space and actually asserting their voices, talking about all manner of things, even training people. I mean, you have Poetry Santua, who's running Black Girls Glow and is raising in one way, shape, or form other girls. You have AKOSUA herself, together with Crystal Tete, who's also a matriarch of contemporary Ghanaian poetry and poetry. They have a podcast. And as women artists, they talk about things that nobody wants to talk about that are affecting women and female artists, in particular. And then you have people like Elizabeth Johnson, who are producing arguably Ghana's biggest literary show on radio. It wasn't like that before. The producer before her was a man. And when he had to go away to school, a lot of people didn't think anyone could fill his shoes, but she's done that and it's seamless. So the literary space, yes, we've had our challenges, but I mean, ironically, when you go to the universities, in fact, if you even understand the history of literature as an academic field, it was reserved when it officially became an area of academia in 1900. It was reserved for women and veterans of war. So people who seemed to be weak were the ones who were allowed to study literature. And now it's become this powerful force, and the men too have come to, take over the space. But in Ghana, we're seeing more and more women, a lot of younger women, and they're writing about their bodies, they're writing about their experiences as young people, as women, as Ghanaians, as just people who are living and breathing in the world. And so we're getting there, but there's still a lot more work to be done. And unfortunately, you do find a lot of women enter the space and then leave because it's tasking. It's tasking to write. And you see, again, I'll speak from the perspective of a mother. When you have children, you have a 9 to 5 because you haven't reached a point where literature is paying us good money, right? It's a lot. And so a lot of people tend to put their literature, their work on the back burner. For me, I do most of my writing at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., because that's the time I get. And again, it's difficult, but it has to be done. And if women like us don't do that, and you have AKOSUA writing plays and staging them and tackling very sensitive issues, and this is in a time where people are proposing bills against the LGBTIQ plus community, and AKOSUA is writing poems and plays that are showcasing people who were born that way and who have a life to live as well. It's difficult, and you will get a lot of passion, especially when you're a woman talking about some of these things. But hey, it has to be done. And I get very excited when I go into schools. I still teach when I get the chance. And young people tell me, I read this poem and it inspired me to be a poet and inspired me to write a book. That's the kind of thing you want to see. But people need to see more women, doing things if more women are going to continue to carry the mantle.
No, that's amazing. Just about what you just said about women doing stuff. It's like what AKOSUA was saying about her being able to do something and it inspiring somebody doesn't. And again, it just goes back to the point of the need for representation in all manners of field within entertainment. I know we have a few questions that's come through, but before I ask those questions, AKOSUA, did you want to speak as well from your point of view as well?
I think APIORKOR said it all,
Yeah.
Honestly, there's nothing to add. All I'll do is just shout out Nana Dakwasi Chiama, who wrote The Sex Lives of African Women, a contemporary writer, came out just this month. I feel like the problem is there are a lot of women writers, but people don't search out for them,
Yeah.
So we also need to do that work.
Amazing, thank you. So we have a question. I'm just going to read it from Roxanne. So it says, free platform, so any of our panelists can answer this. What advice would you give women entertainers in terms of who to choose as a manager or contracts they sign? I ask this because I've observed this trend of some women artists dating their managers or having their romantic partners manage them, which sometimes go against them in a way. APIORKOR, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Big question. And you're right. So lots of women, I mean, let's just start by saying that when two people work very closely together, and you know, the artistic process, creative process is a very intimate one. And anyone who is in your space when you're going through it, you connect with on that meta level, that spiritual level. And so that's why you have a lot of people falling in love with their managers or their producers or people they work with. But the flip side is that for a long time, we've lived in a society that has run sex as a currency. And so, unfortunately, a lot of women, like the women you're describing, have been preyed upon by people who, you know, they may come in with some good intentions, but there may also be an ulterior motive, you know. So you don't have a network, you don't have money, you probably don't have a place to stay, you don't have the money to fund your costuming and make yourself look good and present yourself to the world as a brand. You have talent. So you bring your talent, I'll give you all the other things you need, and then maybe you can give me some loving in return. So sometimes, unfortunately, these women don't even know that that's what's, you know, hiding in the background of all the conversations up front. Having said that though, I believe
I think we've lost APIORKOR for just a second. So we'll just wait for her to come back on. Susan, did you want to add as well? It'd be great to hear your perspective.
Okay, I'm just reading through the question again. I went off a bit. Okay. Who they choose as managers. Okay. So I would also say that, yes, it's something I've seen that a lot of entertainers have their, you know, romantic partners or someone they are having some form of relations with, managing them. I would say one main reason why that happens is that sometimes there's this form of trust, or let's say they feel like these people are the people that they can trust their craft with or trust their, you know, business with. Because I think with business, it comes with trusting people. So I think that sometimes it's that. It also comes from the fact that sometimes you don't have what it takes to start this business. It's not easy to go into entertainment or be a musician. In my perspective, it's not easy to be a musician. Sometimes you have to fund a lot of these things, invest a lot into yourself before you can get to a point where you're saying that, oh, I'm actually getting paid well to sustain my business. So I think that sometimes it goes, you know, it ends up in that kind of relationship. But at the end of the day, I think that the advice you can give yourself is that you can find out if this person is actually, you know, I would say that sometimes the person is not always like maybe vexed in everything. Might not be, we don't have people who are actually going to school to say that I'm going to learn entertainment basics. That's one thing I've realized in Ghana. We don't have people who say that I went to school to go and learn music business per se and come and manage you. It's about I'm learning on the job, or I've done it before, so I'm coming to help you. So I think that you have to find someone who's willing to grow with you. And secondly, contracts, because you're working with human beings, whether it's you're in a relationship or not, you're working with human beings, anything can happen. Even if it's your husband, even if it's your boyfriend, even if whoever it is, it shouldn't be because the person is taking advantage of you. But the advice I would give is that find someone who has the same vision as you. Doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but there should be contracts. There shouldn't be an issue of blackmail or an issue of you thinking that you cannot do it without this person, you know, and the person must be open to you growing and open to you even finding someone else who knows the business, who can be your business manager and your personal manager. There are people who have that. They have a personal manager who advises them and, you know, holds their hand when they're going to do certain deals. And they have people who are business vexed, who know how to manage your finances, know how to manage your day-to-day activities and everything else. So that would be the advice I would give.
Okay, great. I know, APIORKOR, you were just on the cusp of just giving us the antidote before, you know, you cut out, but yeah, please continue.
Sorry
Please.
about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Right. Yes, but I was saying, and very much along the lines of what Susan was saying, that when a lot of the time we start
Okay, I think APIORKOR's cut out again. So we'll just move on to the next question. I do really want to hear her answer as well.
I
AKOSUA,
wanted to
yeah?
jump in a little bit on
Yeah,
this one.
yeah, go on.
I just wanted to say, I think for women entertainers, who they should choose as managers, someone who is incredibly like interested and in love with your craft, right? For you and for the craft and is excited about it. Someone who can mobilize, you know, the person doesn't have to know everything, but the person can mobilize what you need in labels and presentation, in media rounds, in even your community service, CSR, right? How that is also a part of your brand, in branding, right? Someone who's really interested in that. I typically don't fuck where I eat because I try not to, because if this is where my flow of income is coming, and then relationships come and spoil my flow of income, is going to be a big blow to me. So I typically don't advise that, but I know for other people, their paths are different. Some people, it's through their partners that they can get that trust, because there's this quality of being a manager. You need to have a manager who has your back no matter what, like fully loyal. When we say no matter what, they're even ready to erase themselves for your progress. If they realize that they are the ones in the way of your progress, they're even willing to step back and be like, say, no, you need to work with this person instead because of, and that's what most people don't get. And that's rare, because the artist is an ego. The artist, if you think about it, the artist is putting their body, their soul, their mind, their emotional health, right, out there, trying to create music, trying to create film, trying to, you know, so this person is no longer, this person needs to be protected. This person needs to have people who have their back no matter what, so they can just focus on the craft. Because usually if it doesn't happen that way, it brings all sorts of things. We've seen lately problems with mental health issues and all of that, right? So who you have as a manager is really important, especially with that. And yes, they mentioned it, contracts, definitely, right? Even if the person is your romantic partner, sign contracts, you know, become very, very use the language of contracts, be willing to read them yourself, you know, and obviously have people you speak to, I mean, legal practitioners themselves you consult, but you yourself also be willing to read through and ask questions where things are not clear. So that's what I wanted to add.
I love that. I absolutely love that. That humility as a manager as well. Finding managers that are humble enough to put themselves aside, because you are, like, you're as like you said, you're sharing your all. This is your everything. That's amazing. I'm just gonna try again with APIORKOR. If
yes, can you
yeah,
hear me?
amazing. Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'm just going to keep my video off for now because it seems like the bandwidth here is low. Okay, but just piggybacking on what both Susan and AKOSUA have said, I was saying that we have a culture of using sex as a currency. And so unfortunately, a lot of young artists, especially women, you know, women artists, our parents don't let us go out. You don't get to hustle. You know, you're a little more fragile as people would have you think. So you go into the business with just your talent. It's the manager who you meet who has the money, a lot of the times the connections, the spaces to do recordings, the studios. And so you tap into that. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these managers are approaching these young women with ulterior motives. They see their beauty before they even see their talent. Now, of course, a woman doesn't know that, and the manager may do the work, but it may end up leading to something else. Now, I share AKOSUA's opinion. I don't fuck where I eat. You know, it's I just think it's a principle of mine. But I also said in the beginning that the creative process creates bonds that are inexplicable, and sometimes people do end up falling in love with their managers, and it works. It worked for Celine Dion for so many years. It works for some people, right? What I'll say though is that now the internet, and Susan mentioned something, you hardly hear Ghanaians saying they are professional artist managers or that sort of thing. But now the internet gives us so much to learn. And if you go to Coursera, for example, or any of these other free course places, I mean, Berkeley School of Music, all these Juilliard, all these known big names when it comes to education and music and art. They have free courses there, and a lot of them are art business, art management. You can go there, read for yourself, learn for yourself, so that if you're not even doing the management yourself, you can say some, as we say in our local parlance, you also have something to say, you also have something to contribute, and you're knowledgeable. Because a lot of the time it's our ignorance that allows people to prey, upon us and then take what they need from us without us even knowing, right? So I think that's important. Of course, we can't harp on the contracts enough. Contracts. And sometimes it doesn't need to be a 20-page contract. It can be a simple 1-page MOU. And there are templates for that on the internet. Sometimes you're the one who can propose it. And sometimes when you come with the upper hand, you are the one doing the proposal. That, oh, this is what I've seen, this is what I think. And now your manager also comes back. You enter with some leverage, and it's a little more difficult for people to take advantage of you when you have leverage. So that's what I'll say about that.
No, that's amazing. Amazing like advice there from the panelists. And just even to add, I think it's also having that confidence to say, even if you don't know, guys, as APIORKOR says, there are resources available, your network, other females, like ask, don't be afraid to ask those questions because it's needed. And it's what APIORKOR was saying about the challenges, because it just adds to our growth. No, that's amazing. There's another question that's come in, and it's around African literature. So I guess this will go to AKOSUA or APIORKOR. Why are most Ghanaian or African literature about the sufferings of Africans in and outside of the continent? I don't know who would like to go first.
Should I go, AKOSUA, or
Yeah.
you go? AKOSUA, you go first? Should I go? Okay. So let's go back to literature. Or AKOSUA, you go first. Okay, AKOSUA, you go. No?
I was actually saying start. Sorry, I was saying start. Yeah.
So I'm going to take you back to my university literature class, which I shared with AKOSUA many times. One of the things that the concepts in literature and in art in general is art for art's sake. And I mean, you can read about it. It's a very huge philosophy if you haven't heard about it before. But basically what it tells you is that in other parts of the world, people just create art for the sake of creating art because art is beautiful and people must enjoy it. But I always say in our part of the world, we can't afford to create that because art must reflect our society, it must reflect our reality. And if people are writing about the sufferings of Africans, then it's because they're suffering too. People tend to dig into places that are deep and write from their experiences and the things that they're facing, be them the highs or the lows in their lives. The other thing, though, unfortunately, is that a lot of Ghanaian writers and African writers only write about themselves and the things they're experiencing, and the things that the people around them immediately in their immediate circles are experiencing. I always tell my students that art and literature in particular, literature is an art of selflessness and not of selfishness. So you can start from a place where you're writing about what you see and what you experience, but you must rise as an artist to get to the point where you're writing about the experiences of other people, where you're empathetic in your writing. When you're more empathetic in your writing, it won't always be about suffering, even though there may be a lot of that. Now you're writing about other things, people's successes, people's positive experiences, and using that also to inspire. And unfortunately, a lot of writers can't break past that initial writing what they are experiencing directly to writing about the experiences of others, even if they haven't been able to reach those places. So that's some of it, but really, there's too much suffering in Africa to write about nice things. That's the truth. I mean, if we still have a lot of poverty going on, we still have high unemployment rates. We're still in 2021 talking about why we can't use our natural resources to produce our own things. During COVID time, we started out so well in Ghana, for example, with managing the situation. We couldn't produce our own vaccine. Meanwhile, we had some of the best testing regimes and we have some of the best scientists. Then there's a lot of suffering to write about. And I don't really fault writers for doing that. But like I said, we as writers also need to get to the point where we can write about things that we are not experiencing so that there's a multiplicity of voice when we put our work out there. And those things will also make the international world, relate to our writing better and let it travel further.
Yeah, that's amazing. AKOSUA, would you like to add?
Yeah, there's that. Thank you so much, APIORKOR, for saying that. And so when APIORKOR talks, all I'll do is just add, but there are also examples of other writers now that the question was, why are most Ghanaian or African literature about sufferings of Africans in and outside the continent? It's if you look at contemporary, at least in the last 5 to 10 years, there's quite a number of different things. Even APIORKOR Ashong's own collection of poetry is not just about the sufferings of Africans in and outside the continent. I just pull this out, The Sex Lives of African Women. This is written by Nana Dankwa Asechiama. Exciting book, documenting the stories, real life stories of women across the continent. Charlie, full enjoyment. Writers like Akweke Emezi, who is doing crazy things with imagination. There's nothing I can even say about that. I mean, we've got the person who wrote Homegoing, yeah. Okay, well, Homegoing, yeah, JC goes back into history, showing slavery in the transition. That's historical literature. But I mean, there are others. I can't mention all of them now, but I feel like there's also that work we need to do to really engage with the literature that's also being created now by a lot of amazing writers. You should check out the NOMO Awards list. NOMO Awards is an awards for African speculative fiction, and they actually have like lists of works by African writers who are using African futurism, Afrofuturism, imagining worlds in ways you never would, mixing all sorts of like technological advancements and juju and all of these things. And this is contemporary African literature. And what this does is what these African writers are doing they are now using this medium to reimagine, an Africa in ways that we won't see in the news and everyday literature. This is what they're doing now. So let's also do the work and look out for these writers and books too.
Amazing. Right. I think somebody, yeah. Okay, great. No, that's amazing. And AKOSUA didn't plug Moon Girls, so you guys should also check out Moon Girls as well. add into the literature of contemporary literature.
Check out Moon Girls.
Check out Moon Girls, please. No, that's a good balanced view of course, the reality of what's happening in the continent and in Ghana, but also the reimagining of Africa, or what we would like Africa to be. And so my last question will be around women creatives who are shifting and challenging the narrative. So how can we be more intentional about shifting and challenging these narratives in literature, in art forms, in media, in any form of entertainment? And please do give examples as well. So I will start off with Susan, if that's okay. Susan, can you hear me? Okay, while we get Susan back on the call, I will ask APIORKOR to answer this as well, to go first and then AKOSUA.
So Paulina, could you please take the question one more time?
Yeah. So we've also mentioned, we touched a little bit on women who are changing narratives within the entertainment. So NOB, and some of the contemporary women already in terms of literature. So I was asking, how can we be more intentional about shifting this what it is to, about shifting the representation of women in entertainment as it stands.
Okay, so I think a lot of this comes back to those of us in the media and doing what we can when we are creating spaces for ourselves to create spaces for other women as well. No, I mean, I'm glad that I've had Susan August. I would have been very embarrassed to have shared a panel with her and not been able to say that I've had her on my morning show, not once, you know. And I remember the first time I heard her sound and I saw her look, I said, no, this is different. I want this on our breakfast TV, you know. And we've come a long way. It's been difficult, even just segueing a little from the women conversation, to have alternative art in general in mainstream media. And I think we've spoken about that. And when we started City TV and I was asked to take up the production of the morning show, it was a tussle with someone I called, because it just saying, it's all APIORKOR, she's doing her things again, you know. But fast forward, every day you have someone walk up to you and say, oh, hey, I have this artist, can we feature the person, you know, and it's refreshing. Yes, there's a space for rap and hip hop and Afro beats and all those sounds that we know and love, but there's also a space for the things that are a little less common. And you know, women tend to have softer voices, so a lot of the time they're singing softer music. And you find music like that of Susan and other women in the jazz and soul space and indie space. I don't even think we should have a space called indie music or indie art. It should just be music. You know, I would say a smile, it should just be music. Like, why do we have to create this space and we always have to create a minority something? I don't think it's necessary, but that comes from intention, and the media has a huge part to play. If you're going to just want to play music or feature artists who are going to give you instant views and numbers, be it on your ratings as a station or on your social media platforms, then you're doing it wrong. We have the space to actually create the taste that people want and give them what we feel they should take. It takes a bit of time, but it can be done. I think there's a time in this country, there's a certain generation that sings country music as though it was written in Ghana and recorded in Ghana. And it's because Joy FM, that's the oldest player in private media in Ghana, and they came onto the scene in 1995. They were consistently playing country music on the Cosmopolitan mix, you know, and then subsequently Atlantis Radio came and they started doing the same thing. So there's a whole generation that has a heavy taste for country music. Meanwhile, we don't have country musicians in Ghana, not on the scale of any that we see in the US or anywhere else, right? So if we create spaces like that, Afrobeat, if it weren't because somebody played it on radio, we wouldn't have heard it. Chatawale, if it weren't because somebody played it, we wouldn't have heard it. We still have thought that the only form of dance hall was, you know, Bounce Along and Sean Paul and all of that, right? But now we have our own forms and we love them. So media, you know, it's a huge task, but it is our place to make sure that we are creating those spaces. And more so when there are women occupying the media space, we need to make sure that we are intentionally creating the spaces for women artists. It needs to be intentional, it needs to be conscious. It doesn't happen by chance, you know, and so that's what I'll say. Media has a huge part to play, and I'd like to say that maybe in 20 years, I played a part in that.
Definitely, APIORKOR. No, you definitely have played a part. AKOSUA?
I was busily tapping in the chat. The question was...
So the question was, obviously we've spoken about a little bit about the changing like women that changed narratives in terms of representation of women in entertainment. And then you mentioned N.O. Barnes as an example. So the question is, how can we be more intentional as women, or even how can all humans be more intentional about allowing women to change and help shift the representation of women in media, in entertainment, sorry.
By being self-aware, by being communally aware, by checking our prejudices, because patriarchy is something that we all, girls, boys, people who identify as other genders, you know, incorporate. We inhale it. It's from as soon as we come out from our mother's womb, you know. So there's always this othering of women, or creating lesser space for women, even by women themselves, because you shrink yourself, you teach yourself to shrink yourself, right? So it's a lot of self-awareness, introspection, and communal introspection, and also not being afraid to, let me say not being afraid. You're allowed to be afraid. Just gather the courage to be, because you realize that being is the ultimate reason for why we are on this earth, right? It's kind of like you're in a video game on this journey to find the end, which is you coming back to your full self, and how you realize when you are your full self is how you give your best to your community. You give a thing that no one else can give, and then that way you create a abundance where other people couldn't, right? And then other people share in that abundance. So I definitely think it's continuous conversation. It's really good that we have a platform like this, for instance, right, from WomanFest, because public forums are ways by which we start to, you know, engage and shake things in our minds and opinions and thoughts, and try to change. Is by constant talk, and then after constant talk is by actually practicing. By practicing, action becomes habits, and we are trying to come to a stage where it's not just habits, it becomes identity. Like when I sneeze, I don't say, oh God, a male god. No, me, I say goddess, you know, like I try to, I make that my identity, right? It's my default. Because if you see, whenever people are even writing about humanity, when you're referencing humanity, it's a he, you know, it's man instead of human. It's when all men, you know, I don't do that anymore, right? I'll put a she there, and it's something that I used to do 10 years ago, but I had to like always be conscious of it. But now when I write, it's now become my identity. Yes. And that's not something that it starts in a day, right? It's a consistent practice, and also creating a lot of public forums to also help people, just remind them of the message. You know, you need that reinforcement. That's what I'll add.
That's amazing. And as you said, this is why we have forums, platforms, events such as WomanFest to have these conversations. No, that's good. So we're nearly running out of time, but I just want to wrap it up and just say it's been absolutely amazing just talking about women in entertainment and representation. You know, we've highlighted knowing yourself, creating space, and giving opportunities as women as well to other women who don't have those opportunities, and having the confidence and knowing yourself. But yeah, it's been a pleasure speaking to you amazing ladies who are equally rocking every industry within entertainment that you're rocking. I'm now going to pass it on to Elizabeth.
Hi, sorry about that. I was just answering some questions from one of the volunteers. So thank you so much, Paulina, for moderating this session. You've done an amazing job. When we put this together, you were the first thing that came up, and you proved us right that you were the best to do this. And thank you, our panelists, AKOSUA, APIORKOR, and Suzanne, who responded almost immediately after I sent out the mail. Your support for programs like this is always there, and I just want to say thank you for accepting and being on this panel. We've heard and learned so much from you all. So just before we end this, I want to say that we have APIORKOR, AKOSUA actually is going to be with us in a few minutes to have a short conversation about a documentary, Make My Day. And then we have Nikita Ajirako's film showing, 1,000 Needles. Tomorrow we have so many activities, and because it's been mentioned so much, I just want to say that the writer or the author of The Sex Lives of African Women will be joining us at Lota tomorrow. She'll be doing book signings. If you have a copy of her book and you want it signed, tomorrow is a great time. She'll also be doing some short readings from her book, and that's Nana Dakwa Chiama. So to come join us at LOTA tomorrow by 4 p.m. And yeah, so I'll just like to close this for now. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you physically at LOTA tomorrow.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye, everyone.